Hello and welcome. The following presentation shows the work completed by a team of graduate students as part of a professional service project for the Institute for the Environment and Sustainability. The project revolved around the creation of a non-point source implementation strategy, or NPSIS, for a local watershed. This project was completed in partnership with Butler Soil and Water Conservation District. A NPSIS is a type of watershed planning document used in Ohio. It's intended to be a living document that is continuously updated over time. A NPSIS summarizes causes and sources of impairment, defines critical areas of environmental concern, and establishes projects designated to address specific critical areas within the watershed. Once the Ohio EPA has approved a NPSIS, the regulatory organizations that completed the NPSIS can apply for state and federal funding to address non-point source pollution within the watershed, using the projects outlined within the NPSIS. Pollution is considered to be non-point source when the source is not a discernible, confined, and discrete conveyance. Examples of non-point source pollution include stream bank erosion, agricultural runoff, suburban pet waste, or grease and oil from roads. It's important to understand that a NPSIS is designed to address only non-point source pollution within a watershed.
The Acton Lake Dam 4 Mile Creek Huck 12 is our local watershed. Oxford, Ohio is located approximately in the middle, and Acton Lake is in the northwestern section. It also is located within Butler and Preble counties. 4 Mile Creek Huck 10 is the greater watershed in this area, and it drains into the Great Miami River in the south. It's a mix of urban, agriculture, and forested lands. The ALD FMC was designated as impaired in 2008 by the Ohio EPA. There were 8 sampling sites in 2005, and another additional 3 sites were done in 2010 after this report came out. They found that the impaired status is because of sedimentation, siltation, natural conditions like flow regime alterations and habitat alterations, and contamination like metals were affecting the health of the watershed. Some of the tasks included completing the first 2 chapters of the NPSIS, creating 24 GIS maps, and also coordinating a stakeholder meeting held on January 22, 2020 to get public input for this project. At the end of May, we summarized our work completed to a memo that we submitted to the Butler Soil Water Conservation District. In total, we worked about 1,200 hours.
The next series of slides focus on major findings that our group came about during the research phase for the construction of the non-point source implementation strategic plan. Starting off with background information, we found that the EPA identified sources of impairment as dams or impoundments. They also identified high-density urbanized areas. Within the watershed, we do have dams and impoundments along 4 Mile Creek, and the city of Oxford is a high-density urbanized area for this part of the county. Researchers at Miami have found that there are high concentrations of nutrients and sediments within the watershed, which is really important to know when we're doing a plan that's looking at non-point source pollution. Stakeholder engagement is a large part of this plan. So we held 2 stakeholder meetings where we were able to talk with local residents who live within the watershed to get their input on any source areas or areas that they felt that could be of special interest for this type of plan. We also interviewed those Miami professors who conducted research and also emailed any agency representatives if we had any questions. Next, we looked at land use. Land use is really important so we can understand what types of land activities are going on within the watershed. We found that 46% of row crops make up the land use within the watershed, so that's really important to know when we're trying to identify any source areas when it comes to nutrient runoff or anything. Next, protected areas. These make up about 18% of the watershed's area. Protected areas provide positive impacts to the watershed, and especially if they're along along 4 Mile Creek itself.
Biological trends in the watershed showed some problem areas. The Ohio EPA designated Acton Lake as an exceptional warm water habitat based on the variety of species in the lake. Despite this designation, the lake is hypereutrophic because of high levels of nutrients. The largest streams in the watershed, including 4 Mile Creek, Collins Creek, and Harker's Run, are designated as warm water habitats. Out of 11 of the Ohio EPA sampling sites, 4 were considered partial attainment, as shown in the table. This means one of the biological indices did not meet standards for a healthy stream. On the map, we can see where these partial attainment sites are, indicated by orange dots. The Ohio EPA identified the pollution causes and sources for the partial attainment at the 4 sampling sites. The sources included natural sources, urban runoff from the city of Oxford, and an impounded dam on 4 Mile Creek. There are 3 known low-head dams in the watershed. 2 are on 4 Mile Creek, and 1 is on a tributary of Collins Creek. Dam removal could help with water quality in these streams. In addition to Ohio EPA data, we also looked at Butler County Stream Team data to further identify possible critical areas. One of our major observations was high levels of E. coli in Collins Creek and its tributaries. The completion of our part of the work is just the beginning for the Acton Lake Dam 4 Mile Creek watershed. Butler Soil and Water Conservation District will continue to work on the NPSIS, and once it is completed, it can be submitted to the Ohio EPA for revisions and then approval. Thank you for your time today. We are happy to answer any questions you may have.